I had our daughter lie to win the divorce. Now he has 20 acres, millions, and we're dead to him. Yeah, you read that right. I'm not proud of it, but honestly, I'd do it again if I had to. I'm Willow, 37, and this is the story of how I thought I was upgrading my life, but ended up watching my ex-husband living my dream while I'm stuck in this mess. So about 5 years ago, I was married to Peter. He was just a nurse at the local hospital. A good guy, I guess, but nothing special. We had this perfectly average life in our perfectly average neighborhood with our perfectly average bills piling up every month. He'd work these crazy shifts, come home tired, and there was just nothing exciting happening. Meanwhile, I'm getting older, watching my friends posting their vacation pics from Cabo while I'm clipping coupons for the grocery store. It wasn't exactly the life I pictured when I was younger, you know? Then I met Dr. Brandon at a fundraiser for my daughter Maddie's school. He was this charming dentist with his own practice, designer watch, and a smile that practically screamed, "I have money." Between us, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Possibility. Like I could finally escape this middle-class rut Peter had us stuck in. Dr. Brandon started scheduling his cleanings around my appointments, telling me I had perfect teeth, touching my arm when he laughed at my jokes. I'm not stupid. I know flirting when I see it. I started putting more effort into my appearance, losing the mom look. Peter seemed perfectly content with new highlights, better clothes, actually wearing makeup to dental appointments. Peter didn't even notice, of course, too busy complaining about hospital understaffing or whatever. Dr. Brandon, though, he noticed everything. "You look gorgeous today, Willow," became something I lived for. Those little comments made me feel like I was worth something again. The more time I spent with Brandon, the more I resented coming home to Peter. Our house felt smaller, our furniture cheaper, our life more pathetic. I started picking fights over nothing. The way Peter folded laundry, how he never remembered to take out the trash without being asked, how he couldn't afford to take us on real vacations. In my head, I was already gone, already living the life I deserved with Brandon and his country club membership. I knew divorce was coming, but I needed to make sure I got what I deserved after wasting 12 years with Peter. The problem? Peter was annoyingly good with money. Despite his average nurse salary, he had a decent retirement saved up and about $275,000 in various accounts. I wanted that security net. I'd earned it by being his wife all these years, but I knew he'd fight me on it, especially since I was the one wanting out. That's when I started working on Maddie. I feel bad saying it like that, but listen, kids are impressionable, and I needed leverage. I started small, pointing out how Peter was never home for her school events because of his shifts. It's sad how work always comes first for your dad, I'd say, making sure she knew who to blame. I'd accidentally forget to tell Peter about her recital until the last minute, so he couldn't switch shifts, then console her with, "I guess Daddy's patients are more important, sweetie." When Peter and I fought, I'd make sure Maddie overheard the parts where I complained about him, but never his defenses. I'd cry to her about how difficult Daddy made my life, how unappreciated I felt. Kids naturally want to protect their mothers, and Maddie was no different. She started seeing him the way I needed her to, as the bad guy in our story. The real turning point came when I realized that in divorce court, a child's testimony about their father's behavior could be game-changing. I never directly told Maddie to lie. I'm not a monster. I just guided her memories. Remember when Daddy yelled so loud that time? Weren't you scared? Even if he just raised his voice once during an argument, I'd bring it up repeatedly, until in Maddie's mind, Peter was this terrifying figure who always yelled. I suggested that some of his behaviors were not normal and not how dads should act, letting her imagination fill in the blanks. By the time I filed for divorce, Maddie was ready to tell the court whatever would help me. She genuinely believed Peter was this awful father who had made us miserable. In my mind, this wasn't even really lying. It was just making sure we got the financial security we deserved, instead of letting Peter walk away with everything. Besides, Brandon had started hinting at a future together, and I needed to get this divorce wrapped up quickly before he lost interest. What I didn't count on was Peter being smarter than I gave him credit for. Apparently, he'd sensed something was off months ago and started recording our interactions. Not continuously or anything creepy, just when he felt things getting tense, smart enough to protect himself, but not smart enough to keep me interested. That's Peter for you. I had no idea those recordings existed until my perfect plan started crumbling in court. The day we were supposed to discuss custody arrangements, I walked in feeling completely confident. My lawyer had coached Maddie on what to say. Nothing too dramatic, just enough incidents to paint Peter as unstable and potentially harmful to be around unsupervised. She was nervous, but I reminded her that she was helping us secure our future. "Just remember how he made you feel scared all those times," I whispered before they called her in. The judge seemed sympathetic as Maddie described how her dad would get really angry and throw things, and how she didn't feel safe alone with him sometimes. Then Peter's lawyer asked for permission to submit evidence. Next thing I know, they're playing videos from our home. Nothing edited or manipulated, just raw footage of normal arguments where Peter was actually the calm one, while I screamed at him. Footage of me telling Maddie that Daddy doesn't really want to come to your performance. He's just saying that when he called to say the hospital needed him to stay late. Worst of all, they had a recording of me coaching Maddie on what to say, telling her to exaggerate a little bit about how Peter behaved. The judge's face changed completely. My lawyer started sweating, passing me notes about how this was unexpected and we might need to adjust our strategy. The courtroom felt like it was spinning. I couldn't believe Peter had been recording us. Wasn't that an invasion of privacy? But apparently, in our state, he only needed one-party consent, which meant he could record any conversation he was part of. The sneaky little my lawyer tried damage control, arguing the recordings were taken out of context, that they captured me at my worst moments after years of emotional neglect. But those videos made me look exactly like what I was, someone coaching their child to lie in court. The judge called a recess, and my lawyer pulled me into a conference room with this grim look on his face. "This evidence changes everything," he said. "We need to settle immediately before the judge makes a ruling that could go very badly for you." He explained that I could face perjury charges or worse, and that any hope of favorable custody was gone. My perfect plan had backfired spectacularly. When we returned to the courtroom, Peter's lawyer presented their terms. Peter would keep his retirement fund and savings of $275,000. I could keep the house in primary custody of Maddie, but there would be no child support or alimony. Peter would sign away his parental rights entirely. At first I was outraged. No child support? But my lawyer squeezed my arm hard. "Take it," he whispered. "It's better than what you'll get if this goes further." I realized then that Peter wasn't fighting for custody at all. He was just making sure I didn't take everything from him, and after what I'd done, after being exposed in court, he wanted nothing to do with either of us anymore. The judge approved our settlement with this look of utter disgust directed at me. I'll never forget how she said, "I hope you understand the gravity of what you've done here today, Miss Reynolds," as if I was the only one at fault. Where was this judgment for Peter, who had recorded us without our knowledge, who was abandoning his own daughter? When the divorce was finalized in early 2019, I felt hollow. Not because I missed Peter, I was glad to be rid of him, but because I had expected so much more. The house wasn't worth nearly what I thought, and without child support, I was suddenly solely responsible for Maddie. Worse, Brandon started pulling away once he realized I wasn't getting the settlement we'd discussed. Those dinner dates became less frequent, his texts less flirty. By the time COVID hit a year later, he'd moved on to some hygienist at his practice. Peter, meanwhile, just disappeared. He put the house up for sale, sold practically everything he owned, and apparently took nursing contracts in New York and Texas, where they were paying premium rates for experienced staff. No goodbye. No attempt to maintain any relationship with Maddie. He just walked away with his money and his freedom. While I was left picking up the pieces, I told myself it was for the best, that Maddie and I would build a better life without him. That I'd find someone else, someone better than Peter, or even Brandon. But I'd be lying if I said those first months weren't brutal. Maddie started asking questions. Why didn't Dad fight to see her? Why did we have to say those things in court? I deflected as best I could. But kids are perceptive. She knew something wasn't right. The worst part was watching Peter's house sell for much more than I expected. The real estate market was booming, and he walked away with a significant profit that I couldn't touch. My lawyer said there was nothing I could do. The settlement was final, and I was lucky to have avoided worse consequences. Sometimes I'd drive by his old place and see the new family moving in, setting up their perfect life, and I'd feel this rage building inside me. That should have been my fresh start. Instead, I was stuck. A single mom struggling to make mortgage payments on a house that suddenly felt like a prison. The pandemic made everything worse. I lost my retail management job, had to homeschool Maddie, and watched my savings disappear while I scrambled to find remote work. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual friends that travel nurses like Peter were making absurd amounts of money. Hazard pay, overtime, bonuses, while working in COVID hotspots. It seemed so unfair that he got to profit from a global disaster, while I could barely keep our lights on. For almost 3 years, Peter was just gone from our lives. No birthday cards for Maddie, no child support checks, no holiday visits. I told myself he was selfish, that we were better off without him. I dated here and there, but nothing stuck. Most guys weren't exactly thrilled about taking on a bitter divorce with a teenage daughter and financial problems. I'd scroll through dating apps at night and wonder how my life had gone so wrong. Then last fall, I was mindlessly scrolling through Facebook when I saw it, a post from a mutual friend congratulating Peter on his retirement. There he was, tanned and relaxed, standing in front of a gorgeous lakefront property with mountains in the background. The caption mentioned something about him living the dream after years of hard work. I couldn't believe my eyes. Retirement. Peter was barely 45. How could he possibly be retired? I went into full stalker mode, combing through his profile even though we weren't friends anymore. It was mostly private, but I could see enough public posts to piece together a story that made my stomach turn. Apparently, during those years of travel nursing, Peter had been working insane hours. 6 12-hour shifts a week and saving practically everything. But that alone couldn't explain the level of wealth I was seeing in these photos. Then I found a comment thread where someone asked how he managed to retire so young. Peter's response mentioned getting lucky with some early crypto investments and making smart choices during market volatility. From what I could gather, he had taken a chunk of his money and thrown it into Dogecoin when it first appeared on Robinhood, then sold it near its peak. He'd also invested in some UFC stock, whatever that was, and apparently made a killing. The photos were what really got me. His new place wasn't just nice, it was spectacular. A modern house on what the comment said was 20 acres of lakefront property, him paddleboarding on pristine water, sunsets from a massive deck, a home office with a view that belonged in a magazine. And in every picture, he looked happier than I'd ever seen him during our marriage. I showed the post to my friend Tanya over wine that night. "Can you believe this?" I fumed. "He's living like a millionaire while I can barely afford to fix my car." And after what he did to Maddie, Tanya gave me this look, the kind friends give when they're about to say something you don't want to hear. "What exactly did he do to Maddie?" she asked. "He abandoned her, signed away his rights, never called, never visited," I snapped. "Wasn't that the deal you wanted after the whole court thing?" I hated when she played devil's advocate. That's not the point. The point is, he's got millions now, and some of that should rightfully be ours. Maddie's his daughter, for God's sake. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that house, those 20 acres, the financial security that should have been mine if things had gone according to plan. By morning, I'd convinced myself that Peter owed us. Not legally, maybe, but morally. Maddie deserved to benefit from her father's success, regardless of what happened in the divorce. It took some detective work, but I finally got Peter's address from a friend of a friend who had attended his housewarming party. I debated what to do next. A letter demanding support? A lawyer? In the end, I decided the direct approach was best. Maddie was nearly 16 now, old enough to understand more about what had happened, old enough to have her own relationship with her father if she wanted one. I told her we were going on a road trip to see some family. I didn't mention that the family was the father she barely remembered. The drive took almost 6 hours. Maddie spent most of it with headphones on, disinterested in whatever boring relatives we were visiting. I rehearsed what I'd say to Peter in my head. I'd be diplomatic, reasonable. I'd appeal to his conscience about Maddie. I wouldn't mention the money directly. That would come later after he'd reconnected with his daughter. When we finally pulled up to his property, I almost lost my nerve. The place was even more impressive in person, a sprawling modern home with floor-to-ceiling windows perched on a hillside overlooking the lake. There was a boat dock visible down a winding path, and the landscaping looked professionally done. Everything about it screamed money. I parked in the circular driveway and turned to Maddie. "There's something I need to tell you. We're not here to see my cousin. We're here to see your dad." Her eyes widened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I wasn't sure how you'd react. It's been a while and things didn't end well between us, but he's done very well for himself, and I think it's time you two reconnected." She looked confused, maybe a little angry, but also curious. She'd been asking more questions about Peter lately, wondering why he'd left so completely. I saw this as my chance to rewrite our history, to make Peter the bad guy again and position myself as the parent who was trying to foster reconciliation. We walked up to the front door and I noticed a small camera mounted discreetly near the doorbell, a security system. Fancy. I pressed the bell and heard it chime inside. My heart was pounding as we waited. Finally, the door opened, and there was Peter, looking annoyingly fit and well-rested. The recognition in his eyes quickly turned to shock, then something colder. Before I could even speak, he started closing the door. "Peter, wait," I said quickly. "I know this is unexpected, but Maddie wanted to see you." He paused, glancing at our daughter, who was standing awkwardly behind me. For a moment, I thought he might soften. What father could turn away his own child? But his expression remained stony. "You shouldn't have come here," he said flatly. "Please leave my property immediately." "Can we just talk for a minute?" I pressed. "A lot has happened and Maddie's older now. She deserves to know her father." "Maddie," he said, addressing her directly for the first time. "I'm sorry that your mother brought you here under false pretenses, but this isn't a good idea." I could feel my plan crumbling. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. "Peter, be reasonable. We've seen your posts. We know you're doing well now, and we thought—" "I know exactly what you thought," he cut me off. "And the answer is no. I'm calling the police now to report trespassers. I suggest you be gone before they arrive." He closed the door in our faces. Just like that, I was stunned. I pounded on the door, calling his name, telling him he couldn't just shut out his own daughter. But the door remained closed. A moment later, my phone dinged with a text from an unknown number. "Peters, I realized I have you on camera trespassing and harassing me. I've already called the police. Leave now or face the consequences. This is my only warning." I looked up and noticed the camera again. Its little red light was blinking. He was recording everything, just like before. protecting himself from me, from us, making us look like the bad guys when all we wanted was what we deserved. Mom, let's just go, Maddie said, tugging at my arm. She looked mortified, close to tears. This was a terrible idea. In the car, the silence was deafening. I tried to justify what had happened. Your father has issues, Maddie. He always has. That's why we had to leave him. She stared out the window. That's not what it looked like to me. It looked like we showed up uninvited to his house because you found out he has money now. That's not true. I wanted you to have a relationship with him after telling me for years that he was awful, after saying he abandoned us. You never even told me he was rich now, until we were in his driveway. The rest of the drive home was excruciating. Maddie barely spoke to me, and when we got home, she locked herself in her room. I tried calling some friends to vent, but the responses were lukewarm at best. Most people seemed to think I had crossed a line by showing up at Peter's house unannounced. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Maddie started asking more questions about the divorce, about what really happened in court. She found old family photos and began piecing together inconsistencies in my stories. One night, she confronted me directly. Did you make me lie about Dad in court? I tried to deflect, to reframe it, but she wasn't having it. I was 12, Mom, not 2. I remember things. I remember you telling me what to say, and I remember Dad crying when the judge said he couldn't see me anymore. It wasn't like that, I insisted. Your father chose to walk away. He signed those papers voluntarily. After you tried to destroy him in court, she shot back, I've been doing research online about parental alienation. That's what you did, isn't it? You turned me against him. I'd never seen her so angry, so disappointed in me. That night, she called my mother, her grandmother, and asked to stay with her for a while. She needed space, she said. Space from me. News travels fast in small towns. Within days, people were whispering about our failed ambush at Peter's house, about Maddie moving in with my mother. Old friends stopped calling. I got awkward looks at the grocery store. Someone even left a nasty note on my car calling me a gold digger. My mother, who had always taken my side, finally called me out. You've made a mess of things, Willow. That poor man rebuilt his life after what you did to him, and you couldn't just let him be. That poor man is living in luxury while his daughter and I struggled for years. I shot back. His daughter, who you taught to lie about him? My mother's voice was uncharacteristically hard. I love you, but I'm ashamed of what you did. And now Maddie knows the truth, and she's ashamed too. The final blow came when Maddie announced she wanted to legally change her last name, to drop mine and take back Peter's. I don't want to be associated with what you did, she told me, her young face serious and determined in a way that reminded me painfully of her father. I tried to fix things, to explain my side, but it was too late. The narrative had shifted. I was no longer the wronged wife who had raised a child alone. I was the manipulator who had used her own daughter as a weapon, who had tried to extort money from her ex-husband when she discovered his success. Today, I live alone in the house that once felt like a prison and now feels like a mausoleum. Maddie still lives with my mother, visiting me occasionally, but always with this guarded look in her eyes. She graduates next year and has already told me she's applying to colleges in the state where Peter lives. My mother thinks it's healthy for her to try to rebuild some relationship with her father, even if he's reluctant. As for Peter, his life continues to flourish, from what I can see in the occasional social media posts friends share with me. He travels, he donates to charities, he seems to have found peace. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just been honest. If I'd told him I was unhappy, if we divorced amicably, if I hadn't tried to take everything from him, would we have stayed in touch? Would he have shared some of his good fortune with Maddie? Would I still have my daughter's trust? But those thoughts don't last long. It's easier to believe I deserved more, that the system failed me, that Peter got lucky while I got left behind. Even now, I find it hard to admit that I'm here because of choices I made. After all, I just wanted what any woman would want. Security, comfort, a better life. Is that really so wrong? Still, in my darkest moments when the house is quiet and I'm scrolling through old photos of happier times, I wonder if there's a parallel universe where I didn't try to destroy Peter in court, where I didn't poison Maddie against him, where I didn't show up at his door looking for a handout. The universe where I might be welcome on those 20 acres, sharing in that wealth and happiness, part of a family instead of a cautionary tale. But that universe isn't this one. In this one, I'm just the ex-wife who tried to cheat the system and lost everything that actually mattered in the process. This story is over, but the next one will leave you speechless.